Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Watchung Booksellers Podcast, where we bring you conversations from our bookstore's vast community of book professionals who talk about what they do for the love of books. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kathryn, and I'm here with my co-producer, Marnie. Hey, Marnie. Hey there. And today we are talking about humor writing.
That's right. Our guests today are humor writers Ian Frazier, a longtime New Yorker contributor and friend of the store, and his daughter, Cora Frazier, who is also a contributor to The New Yorker and who grew up in Montclair.
I do think this is our first discussion from a family. I guess not counting Maddie and Margot, but they weren't talking about writing. So they had a great chat, and it was just lovely to have them both here in the store. Before we get to their conversation, Marnie, do you have any books you want to recommend?
I do. I'm reading The Return by Hisham Matar. It's a 2016 memoir, and it is on the New York Times Best 100 Books of the 21st Century, and it is our next pick for our book club. So if you want details and you want to register for that, you can do so on our website. How about you, Kathryn? What are you reading?
I just got a galley of Ghost Town by Tom Perrotta. It's coming out in April, and Tom Perrotta is, if you don't recall, he's the author of Election and Little Children and The Leftovers. And this is set in the 70s in the suburbs of New Jersey, as are many of his things. And I'm really excited to dig into it. And we're hoping to have Tom on the podcast in a little while. So I kind of want to get ahead of that, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I want to read that after you.
I'll pass
Please.
it on.
Thank you. Okay, let's introduce our guests and get on with the conversation. Ian Frazier is the author of Travels in Siberia, Great Plains, On the Res, Lamentations of the Father, and Coyote vs. Acme, among other works, all published by FSG. His latest work, Paradise Bronx, The Life and Times of New York's Greatest Borough, is his magnum opus, a love song to New York City's most heterogeneous and alive borough. He graduated from Harvard University and is a frequent contributor to The New Yorker. He lives in Montclair, New Jersey.
And with him is his daughter, Cora Frazier. Cora is a writer of humor and fiction based in Brooklyn. Her work has appeared in The New Yorker, Volume 1 Brooklyn, McSweeney's, The New York Times, N+1, and Saturday Night Live. She is the co-creator and writer of the psychological thriller and Audible original, I Think You're Projecting. Cora is also a teacher and speaker. She has taught first-year writing, literature, and journalism at the City University of New York and creative writing at Rutgers University and New York University. She has given talks on humor writing at the University of Colorado Boulder and the Amsterdam Writing Workshops.
Enjoy the conversation, and we'll be back after to fill you in on what's coming up in the store.
I'm Ian Frazier, and I'm with my daughter, Cora Frazier. Cora has come out from Bedford-Stuyvesant, where she lives with her husband and son, Oscar, my first grandchild, and she has kindly come out here to record this with me.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having us. It's nice to be back in Montclair. I'm a graduate of Montclair High School, and it's nice to be close by so we can come out and see you.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about humor, and we're gonna talk about writing it. I sort of wanted to start out by saying how funny you were as a kid, and how funny Thomas was. Thomas is our son, and I thought of one anecdote or one thing that seemed really significant to me. We lived in Missoula for a long time. We've lived here 29 years. My wife, Jacqueline Carey, and I have lived here 29 years. She is also a writer. She's a novelist and short story writer. And we lived in Missoula, Montana for like 4 or 5 years when Cora was in elementary school. And I remember sitting around with the people from the University of Montana MFA writing school. And these are some very witty and quick and funny people. And somehow the question came up, if you could ask Dracula one question, what would you ask him? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And Cora said, and all the grown-ups are coming up with these questions. And Cora, who's like 8 years old, said, if I could ask Dracula just one question, I would ask him, who is his doctor? And
Yeah.
I thought, what an ingenious, out of nowhere, brilliant question. And at that moment, I think I thought she will be a writer, and she will be a humor writer, maybe, because that's a premise, you know,
True.
like Dracula's doctor. And then you made things for me when I was, on my birthday, and I was unable to find them. I looked for them in my files, but we had this concept that the band Aerosmith had been around for like 5,000 years because they kept reissuing things like that you never even knew Aerosmith had recorded way back when. And you did an album cover for me of the Log album. That was like something from like before the Stone Age, when it was still just wood.
All right. Yeah.
And
OG Aerosmith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another time you did an FBI file for me. You did a complete FBI file with all the papers they had on me. And you're like 8, 9 years old. So how did you get into writing?
Well, I tried to resist it.
And that's true.
I did not want to be a writer. I think that your life, Mom's life, it was just sort of incomprehensible to me. And
well, I always thought that the way you looked at a writing career was, if these idiots do anything.
Oh no! I mean, but just the sort of like the vicissitudes I was very aware of, or moving, or just stuff like I really loved in high school. I really loved mock trial and debate.
Oh, we have to mention how you did it, how Montclair did in mock trial, because you won the state. No, we won the state
champions. I mean, George Burroughs is just a magic worker. He's just a wonderful man.
Shout out to George Burroughs and to Mr. McDonough too.
And Mr. McDonough,
so
we have just a fantastic program at Montclair High School, which I'm so grateful for. And I think if I could have done mock trial professionally, I probably would have. But
mock trials,
it's not really a thing. Unfortunately,
well, it should be though.
Yeah. Being a lawyer is a little different. Yeah. But I realized as I got older, that the part I liked the best was writing, because I did the closing statement, and and that was my favorite part, was writing the closing statement. Right. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll be a speechwriter. So I'm not going to do what my parents are doing, because I'm going to be a speechwriter. That's different, And then when I went to college, you had told me, you said, go to a intro meeting for the Lampoon and just check it out. And I just was like completely transfixed and, just decided that I wanted to focus on that. And I remember you told me, you said, I think you went to the Lampoon because you were homesick. Which is something
I don't remember saying that.
I always remember that you went there because you were homesick. And I think that there's some truth to that.
Well, to kind of go back to the origin of how I happened to know about the Lampoon, I'm from Ohio, and in my high school, there was a really brilliant guy, 4 years older than I, who went to Harvard, and his name was David McClellan, and he did cartoons for the Lampoon, and he did like the most famous cover ever of the Harvard Lampoon. And I pure worship David McClellan. And so when I went to Harvard, that was the first place I went. I went to the Lampoon, knocked on the door, and said, and the Lampoon is a building. It's a kind of, I guess, Dutch castle, miniature version.
Mock Flemish castle.
Mock Flemish, okay.
Yes.
It's a beautiful building. And I went there, introduced myself, and I became a member of the Lampoon my freshman year. And so I did the Lampoon throughout college, and I did nothing else.
Yeah.
I
Well,
have
I
no-
barely did anything
I
else.
have no college education, but I did focus on that. And we did a parody of Cosmopolitan magazine my senior year. And I did a lot of it. And the other main person who did it was Jim Downey, who is now a very famous comedy writer and actor. But so I had been on the Lampoon. And when we came back and were visiting our friends, I took you to the Lampoon building, and you were a little kid. And the guy there, as I remember it, the undergraduate who happened to be there said, well, don't let her go upstairs. We're not letting her upstairs to see the castle, to see the Great Hall upstairs, because maybe she'll be a member someday. And I think that registered with you.
Yeah. Because I just hung out. The undergraduates didn't talk to me, but I just hung out in the library while you walked around, because supposedly, not supposed to be a member if you've seen the building.
You've seen the whole building.
Yeah.
But the other, for me, kind of touching thing about it is when I was a junior in college, they debated, should we admit women? And before that, it had been all guys. It had been a male-only organization. And it was really like old school stuff, and not stuffy, because there were funny people there sometimes, but it was an old school, like, men's club. And I remember that I was the principal agitator for admitting women, but then there's like 10 other guys that say the same thing. So,
I know. Heroes.
It's like the number of people who say they danced with Martha Graham. There's thousands. They can't have been men. But anyway, so we did decide to do it, and we admitted the first woman elected was Patty Marks, and she is still writing humor and is a good friend. But anyway, at that time, I can say it didn't occur to me that I was saying, let my daughter on. We should admit my daughter, because she's going to be really funny. I mean, that's, I was 19 at the time. So, well, maybe 20, but a long time ago. So anyway, the Lampoon was of great importance. Yeah.
And I think that kind of male perspective has persisted on the magazine.
Yeah, that was your experience.
I mean, I think it probably changes so much with every class. But I think when I was elected, it was a little bit more, just more guys who were writing at that time. And I remember a big moment for me in humor writing was when you told me to focus on the moments where I would make someone else laugh. And I have very funny girl cousins who are my age, and aunts, very funny aunts. And we were at a holiday, and I was telling a story about pet sitting, just a random story about pet sitting this like kind of terrifying boxer that would stare me down when I went kibble or So I was just telling this story, and my cousins were laughing a lot. And then when we left, you said to me, that was funny, and you were making your cousins laugh. And I think it was really revelatory to me, and just made me think so differently about comedy, to think, wait, I could imagine a different audience, which isn't undergraduate men, which is maybe, my cousins. And I think now there's so much more women in comedy, and it's so much more diverse. I mean, even in just like the past 15 years I've been writing comedy, it's so much more diverse. But just at that time, like that, because I sort of thought that comedy was Jack Handey. Jack Handey, who wrote for SNL, he did Deep Thoughts. He's written a number of books, humor pieces. And I just thought that is comedy. And I think when you realize, oh no, that is Jack Handey, that is his voice.
Right.
That is his personality. And actually, you are imitating him. If you are writing in that voice.
It's hard not to. I mean,
you're imitating him.
He's so, his voice is so strong, it's hard not to slide into it. But yeah.
Totally. And so people are like doing Deep Thoughts, or they're doing, and Jack Handey, he described his voice as like a dangerous,
like somebody who's mentally impaired and dangerous.
Yes, that was how Jack Handey described it.
Yeah.
but but that's a specific type of comedy that he's doing, and that is hilarious. But to think, oh no, I could have a different voice that could be more authentic, that could be female, that could be maybe trying to make females laugh,
Right.
trying to make people I love, my cousins, laugh. Like, that was so huge for me. And I
Right.
think on the Lampoon, we did a parody of Nightlight. Well, the title was Nightlight. We did a parody of Twilight. My friend Courtney Bowman and I wrote this book, which was a parody, and we were inspired by the Cosmopolitan parody, and by the Lord of the Rings parody. So the Lampoon has done a number of parodies over the years. But so I think even the idea that you would choose a book like Twilight that had a kind of young female audience
Right.
to parody, like, that was
Right.
also a little bit different, at least at that moment. And then I think it was really influential when I graduated and thinking about the type of humor that I wanted to write, to think about like different audiences.
Right. And maybe for people who don't know, or I would imagine a lot of people know who Jack Handey is, but Jack Handey writes almost like poems that are really funny. And I was trying to describe Jack Handey. I was out in Columbus at the Thurber House giving a talk, and I was trying to describe these jokes. And I said, okay, here is a Jack Handey joke. The crows were calling his name, thought Caw. And I didn't know if that would go over with an audience, because you have to have the capital C,
Right. Okay.
in Caw. But it went over with that audience.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, that's just to kind of fill in on that. But that's
it's
such a powerful voice.
And
it's also very much an internet voice. I mean, the thing Jack has to worry about is he gets ripped off all the time, because they fit perfectly,
Totally.
deep thoughts. But he also writes longer pieces and very funny books. But anyway, to go back to that moment with your cousins, the other thing that I was trying to point out is that you need a double consciousness. I mean, everybody in America, I think, has one kind of double consciousness or another. Some people much more double than others. But if you're being funny, you get into it and you're just going along and doing it and people are laughing. The double consciousness is when you step back and you say, what did I just say that was funny, to yourself, and you remember it. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's the kind of abstraction that professional people have. That's, like when a doctor can be talking to you like on a social occasion and see blah, 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 and look at you and go, oh my God, that guy has whatever, that the doctor steps back and sees things. And so there are funny writers who very much depend on having somebody else do that, so that they'll say, what did I just say that was funny? And I used to do that with your mother when all the time I would say, oh God, I said something funny at that party. What was it? And she would say, I'm not remembering it. I'm not remembering your funny lines. You have to remember them yourself. And that's what being a humor writer is.
And I think this is a quote of Jim Downey's, but when you're writing comedy, you're always an underdog.
I have never heard that one.
Oh, I thought I got it from you. Or maybe that's me. Maybe that's me. And I just attribute all comedy thoughts to Jim Downey. But you're always an underdog. And I think to really do it, to really be a comedy writer and do hard comedy, that it's almost like a sickness. Like you
I totally
100%. And if you're not scared, like you're probably not going to be that funny. Like, I think it's because it's so much about surprise and the unexpected. And so the second that you're resting on your laurels, you're probably not going to be surprising people.
Right. That's a good point.
And so you really have to keep changing, because I do think there's a certain amount of pleasure in familiarity with comedy, but that has diminishing returns. I mean, I think it's the challenge of an SNL is just, you have a bit that works for so long, and then you need new people, you need new blood,
right?
Right. It's a hustle. It's a real hustle.
I think also that if you're writing humor, you have a mind that does that. So it's certainly in my case, if I'm in any situation, I will think of 10 inappropriate things to say.
Is that God, Dad?
What?
That's horrible.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What?
It's true. It's like my mind. It's intrusive thoughts. It's like the technical term for it.
Things.
But I'll just think of things like shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Don't say that. And I think that a lot. I mean, I know people that don't filter. You know, I know people that just say whatever it is. And somebody asked me. They were doing a New Yorker event, and they asked me what they should call it. And, you know, there were like 40, I mean, there were a lot of humor writers that would be participating. And I said, well, why don't, and I was just one of 40. And I thought of saying, why don't you call it An Evening with Ian Frazier and Friends, right? Mm-hmm. And then I thought, that's a jerky thing. Don't say that. And I didn't say it.
Yeah.
And when they announced it, another humor writer had thought of that exact title, had told them, and they had taken it. Oh. And I thought, I'm glad I had the restraint, because I don't think it's a very funny thing to say. But that it's funny. It's pretty funny. Okay. I mean, in retrospect, maybe I
no, but I mean, maybe less generous, you know.
Well, you don't want to say something that somebody else is going to say if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
But
there's definitely, I find that with my comedy, that there's like, maybe there's 10 jokes, or I don't know, that I wish there were 10 jokes. There's maybe like 5 jokes. I'm like, okay, that's the bad version. That's the bad version. That's the bad version. Okay, 6 joke. Okay. That's the good version.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but the mind will just do that. And it is, in a way, just like Will Rogers said, never miss a good opportunity to shut up. Mm-hmm. and Will Rogers was really funny. But you came out of the Lampoon, and it wasn't too long before you were publishing humor pieces in the New Yorker. And I remember I was fishing with David Remnick, who's the editor, and he said to me on that trip, "Oh, I saw a piece by Cora. We didn't take it, but it was really good." And, you know, he was very like, this is going to work. And then very soon after, you did your first piece, which I thought was a really brilliant piece. Can you describe that one? That was it was. It was taken from a quote.
Well, I felt, I mean, I still feel this way, but I felt so much like I had something to prove. And that's the sickness element, I think, is really apt here. I have the sickness a little bit less now, but I was looking everywhere. And I think you had suggested, Dad, that I look at like the daily news and publications for quotes that could inspire a humor piece. And I think this was a quote that was in AM New York, the subway paper, back when they would hand it out.
Yeah.
It was a quote about people being willing to divorce their spouse if they could avoid a commute.
It was a really funny and
just absurd.
Strange quote.
And it was like it was a majority.
Yeah.
The majority. Yeah. And so it was a woman explaining, well, you know, to her husband, well, we're going to get, you know, I'm divorcing you, but I'm going to have a shorter commute. So that was the piece.
It was just this explanation, like, you know, and what about the kids? Look, that's up to you. I mean, you know, when I started at the New Yorker, I published my first humor piece there 50 years ago.
Wow.
When I, you know, in 75. And at that time, they did not indicate that it was a humor piece. Like now it says Shouts and Murmurs. They put it at the front after Talk of the Town, but they put it where they put short stories. And sometimes there would be, I don't know, they ever had maybe 3 short stories, but they would very often have 2. And they would be after the Talk of the Town, but before the longer reporting pieces in the magazine. Also, at that time, the magazine could be 200-some pages because they had jillions of ads. But so the humor piece had to be a piece of writing there was nothing excusing, so that if you wrote a humor piece and they published it, well, it would be there, but then the next piece would be by John Cheever, or the next piece would be by William Trevor. And so the humor piece had to sort of work also as a piece of writing. And that was what I wanted to do. And I did it. I kept trying to do it. And I think in 11 years, I published maybe 12 pieces. And also, I was just starting out, and I didn't really know how to write. But I was reading this interview with our very good friend, Jamaica Kincaid, who they were talking about her famous piece, Girl. Mm-hmm. And I remember, because I was writing humor pieces, George Trow, who was another New Yorker writer at that time, was writing humor pieces. And Jamaica just wrote this piece. And it is a hilarious piece, Girl, if you ever hear it read. But that was sort of like the genre was kind of pieces in the range of 1,000 to 2,500 words that were funny, but also pieces of writing. And Jamaica's piece has stood up as a great piece of writing, maybe the most famous short piece of recent times. But that has changed. That's not how they do it anymore.
Yeah, Girl really follows this classic comedy structure, the repetition and the escalation. I mean, chiefly the repetition of the slut you are so bent on becoming,
right?
Which I think only appears 3 times, although it
seems to appear.
Yeah, it's so
a lot.
It's just such an arresting phrase that it seems as if it appears much more often. But yeah, I think about what I'm doing in that tradition, in the casual tradition that could be flash fiction or could be humor. And I did a flash fiction piece in the New Yorker flash fiction series, and I think a lot of people thought that it was a humor piece. And in a way, I actually didn't write it that dissimilarly from the way that I write my humor.
Right.
And I think there were kind of funny elements to it.
Yeah, the piece that I wrote, it ended up not appearing in the New Yorker because for complicated reasons, but it was in the Atlantic. Lamentations of the Father, which is, I think, probably, the best known piece of mine, is in the voice of the book of Leviticus from the Bible. Only the speaker, who I guess is God, really, is telling children things they can't do, or correcting children. And this is from when you and Thomas were little. Mm-hmm. And I would find myself saying things and think, what did I just say? And I remember you were sitting in the back seat in car seats, Thomas was in a car seat and you were just in the seat. And I had put a bag of groceries in there. And at the top of the bag of groceries was a loaf of bread. And you were both barefoot and you started rubbing your feet on, because it was fun to rub up against the bread. And I said, don't rub your feet on bread. And I went back and wrote that down. And pretty soon I had a whole long list of it. And it's so interesting to me that it's now sort of happening again in things that you say to your son.
Yes. Well, I mean, sometimes I think, to go back to the beginning of the conversation, that's the true origins of humor for me. Because I remember, I've heard you read it so many times, and I think it's funny every time. And I remember hearing you read it on Prairie Home Companion, and we listened on the radio, and we heard just this massive audience laughing. And Thomas and I were just prone on the floor, just this delight. And I think especially because it was things we had done.
Those are things you actually
that we had
done.
There was this special connection to it. But then now I find myself saying these similar things, and I'm sure that parents will identify with that. But just the most absurd things. Like I was on the phone with you, Dad, a few weeks ago, and I said to my son, "No, we don't stand on top of the drinking fountain. You can't stand on top of the drinking fountain. Like just stuff like that. Like why? Yeah.
And I mean, you realize at some point somebody must have said that. I know I said things like that to you.
Yeah.
Somebody must have said that to me. That these things that you have to do to
Yeah.
socialize a child is you have to say, you don't take your carrot stick and write with it on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just don't do that, and that's part of that piece. But I took Oscar over to Brookdale Park, and we were at the drinking fountain. He wanted to climb up on the drinking fountain.
He wants to stand on top.
He wants to have his foot in where the water is coming out.
Yeah.
And he's climbing and striving and so vexed because I keep pulling him. No, you can't climb up on top of the drinking fountain.
Yeah, he's 2. Yeah. But it's similar to the bath, so it's like it's maybe logical, So he thinks, just put me up there, put me up there, and I can bathe my toes.
When I was really looking at this, the piece again, I saw there was a thing in there, do not drink of your own bathwater, and then the next phrase is, nor of bathwater of any kind. And I remember that comes from saying to you and Thomas, you don't drink your own bathwater. And one of the other of you said, well, can you drink somebody else's bathwater? I said, no, you can't drink bathwater. Simple as that. But in that piece, the other element is the biblical element. And I had spent how many years when you were little, both my parents had died, and I had their papers. And I was home at that time because you were little, and it was just sort of chance. But I went through all these papers, and a lot of people in my past, they had saved papers of their ancestors, had been ministers. And so I ended up reading all these things that they had read, like, and reading the Bible, and kind of trying to inhabit the world that they lived in. And I'm talking, early 20th century and then 19th century out in Ohio, where they were associated with various churches and various small towns, and how important that was to them. Like that they would go, and if the sermon was less than an hour, they would feel kind of, our minister isn't doing his job. But that because of those two voices, and one thing that you mentioned in that really great piece that was for Harvard Magazine, or?
It was for the Harvard Gazette.
The Harvard Gazette, is that what you're looking at in humor is a combination of voices.
Yes. And so for example, with that piece, you have this biblical voice. And I think I'm really glad that you situate it in this particular tradition, because there's the biblical voice can mean so many different things, there's a lot of
bad biblical voices out there, really bad.
For sure. But I think the strength of yours is that it's very specific. It's very rooted in this specific kind of old Midwestern Protestant kind of tradition.
And it's not just a general parody. It's a parody of a particular part of the Bible, the book of Leviticus, which has however many, 213 laws or something like that. And when you read the book of Leviticus, you think, wow, is that right? Because it'll say, like, you can't eat creeping animals that go on their belly, with the exception of, and then it says you can eat the locust. You can eat locusts? Really? But that's accepted. Yeah. And then you can go to John the Baptist in the wilderness, and John the Baptist, it says he ate locusts and wild honey. So he's keeping kosher, he's living out there, but he's eating bugs. And it seems like, but that when you get into the specifics of what Leviticus says, it is very, very specific. Like you can't eat weasel,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but
to me, that reminds me so much of just this type of negotiation you have to do with a toddler, which is absolutely absurd. Like you can eat the locust, but not the wild honey. I mean, I'm in a situation with my son where I'm like, okay, so you can have lunch while you're riding your scooter, but you have to wear a helmet, like just making these Jamaica
said a brilliant thing when her kids were little, she said, all children are Alan Dershowitz.
Yeah.
I mean, that they will give you back an argument like 10 different ways. But
well, I was thinking about this idea of the two different voices. So I guess I was starting to say this, but Lamentations is this very specific biblical voice, and then the voice of childhood absurdity. But I was thinking of that when I reread one of my favorite pieces of yours, which is Michiamo Stan.
oh yeah, yeah.
And
That was, about. I mean, that was based on a real ad.
I know.
That like it said, for I think it was for some teach yourself a language course, and it said, one day he's teaching himself Italian, the next day he's going out with an Italian supermodel or something, which just seems so absurd to me. So I took the guy who was learning the language and put him in like the Midwest, and he was a farmer.
Well, that was the quote. The quote was, he was a small town Midwestern boy.
Oh, right.
She was an Italian supermodel. He would only have one chance
That's
to
right.
impress her.
I've forgotten
So,
the quote.
so the ad is creating this fantasy that you're going,
Right.
that you are going to, you live on a farm and you're going to have this chance encounter and you're going to meet the woman of your dreams, but you have to buy the software and you have to learn Italian.
Right.
So it's such a good example of the two different voices, because you have these two different vocabularies, literally,
right.
because you're explaining how to translate farm vocabulary,
right,
and model vocabulary,
right,
in the humor piece, which just creates the most hilarious combinations, like to hay, to manure, to accessorize,
right, like
to sachet, to apply bag balm.
One of the sentences was, "This stock tank de-icer doesn't work," or something.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to come up with the Italian for stock tank de-icer.
So you can explain to the supermodel,
right, who is going to be fascinated
about your farm life.
Yeah. I really like that piece you did about people going west, the diary of the people going west, and all the stuff that happened to them, just how incredibly wretched it kept getting, even more and more wretched. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, well, it was a take on the idea of squad goals.
That's right.
Which
and it ended up eating some of the squad members, I think.
Oh, God, I mean,
I don't remember.
Possibly.
But I thought, as I read that, I thought, there were some kind of hard scrabble moments in Montana when we lived there, and that I thought maybe that had influenced it.
I think that's true. I mean, I just associate Montana with imagination itself, because we read so many books there, and we did plays and things like that. And I don't know, I think it's something kids don't have as much, but I had a lot of empty summer days and long nights. And yeah.
Well, I think we're getting up toward the end of this conversation. Anything you wanted to read, or did you have any?
So, I've been reading Raymond Chandler because my mom writes fiction and mysteries, and she got me a whole bunch of mysteries.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't as familiar with mysteries, but my fiction podcasts have mystery elements. So she said, these are the books you need to read. So I've been reading Raymond Chandler, and it's so interesting to me how. And I think that this has happened so much in my life that I often encounter the imitation before the original. And
I know.
It happens over and over. So I'm actually reading Raymond Chandler, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a PI voice. God, it's so familiar. Like, what? Who's he copying?
Yeah.
No, but he's much more on the origin side of that voice. But I think that Raymond Chandler is quite funny. And
he's just a brilliant writer.
And I have felt just completely, I don't like the PI voice in comedy. It's a very common thing to be like,
really boring
I'm
voice.
a hard-boiled, like legs for days. And I'm just like, ugh, like, no, because you just see it a lot. But I kind of understand it in that I think that Raymond Chandler is so funny. And just I mean, like some of the metaphors are just so wacky. There was like something about a goat eating barbed wire. I was just like, what? And then also sometimes the metaphors are very funny. The figurative language is very funny. And it was something like that Marlowe is at this office building full of offices for lawyers you wish the other guy had. And it's just so brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's completely changed my perspective on, if not the PI voice generally, at least I understand why it's so seductive because he does it so well.
It is such a seductive voice. That is such an interesting notion about first encountering something as parody.
Yeah.
And when I was senior in college, Monty Python first kind of hit the scene. And one of the skits in Monty Python was the Summarize Proust contest. And Michael Palin is trying to summarize all of Proust. And he starts out and goes, okay, right, you've got Swan, right? And Swan is and like, ding! And he doesn't even get like a tenth of the way into Swan's Way, the first volume. And I thought, I had never basically even heard of Proust. And I thought, what is this? Summarize Proust. So I read all of Proust. I then went and got Proust and spent however many years and read however many volumes. I think there's 8 or 9 volumes.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that you come to, like in Monty Python, there's a moment where if you say mattress to somebody, they go nuts and you have to do blah to get them to stop going nuts. And what you had to do was jump. And they said, to stop this, we must jump in the fish tank and sing. And they jumped in the fish tank and they began to sing Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. When I can't sing, but it's the most beautiful hymn. And I had never heard it. And I then went and found Jerusalem, the hymn. And it's just like, it just blows me away. And then I read the Blake poem, Jerusalem. But I came to it by way of just being silly about it. So it's kind of, it's a funny thing. Yeah.
I almost want to curate the order. I mean, maybe this is the teacher in me, but say like, no, okay, you have to read this first. You have a syllabus, right? So then we did before.
Right.
But I think it becomes almost more, more imperative, I think, after you encounter something funny. It can be more imperative to go to the original.
Right. Well, I wanted to recommend not a book only, but a writer. I've been reading William Carlos Williams. I think he is such a great poet. And I looked on my phone, and he lived in Rutherford. And I asked my phone how far it was from here, the Watchung Booksellers, to William Carlos Williams' house in Rutherford. It's 6.5 miles from here to William Carlos Williams' house.
Wow.
And I read, and so I've been reading the collected poems, and I've read them and reread them and read Williams's autobiography. And I would say for people, probably people listening, you're in the area that William Carlos Williams, this great poet, wrote about. And you go through the landscape that, if you're taking the train in, you're going through that kind of, downhill from Montclair landscape where he lived. And there's descriptions that are just unbelievable. And he was also just a complete committed modernist. And I am a very, very late arrival to modernism. It was basically over and done, but by the time I was born, but still I knew a lot of people, writers of that tradition, in the sense that there were people at the New Yorker I considered to be very much in a modernist tradition, and the New Yorker itself in that tradition. So I find it really wonderful to read William Carlos Williams, and I recommend him to anybody. His 2-volume collected poems is just great. But it's good talking to you, Cora, and
Thank you.
Thanks to Watchung Books for inviting us to do this.
Thank you, Jed.
You're
And
welcome, sweet.
thank you, Watchung Books.
Thank you, Ian and Cora, for chatting with us. Listeners, you can find their works and all the books they've talked about on our website and in our show notes.
Tonight, September 30th, Jennifer Ann Moses will be in store to talk about her new book of short stories, You've Told Me Before. And next Thursday, October 9th, Amanda Hess will be at the Montclair Public Library to talk about her book, Second Life, Having a Child in the Digital Age, with book reviewer Kate Tuttle.
On Tuesday, October 14th, we host our third in a series of art topic books at the Montclair Art Museum with Christopher Gorham, author of Matisse at War. And the following night, October 15th, we welcome a hometown debut novelist, Caroline Palmer, to talk about her book, Workhorse.
And on October 27th, you definitely won't want to miss Mona Awad for the release of We Love You Bunny. Tickets are going fast, so be sure to grab one now.
You can get details and tickets for all of our events, story times, and book clubs through our newsletter, show notes, or at watchungbooksellers.com.
The Watchung Booksellers Podcast is produced by Kathryn Counsell and Marnie Jessup, and it's recorded at Watchung Booksellers in Montclair, New Jersey. The show is edited by Kathryn Counsell, and original music is composed and performed by Violet Mujica. Research and show notes by Caroline Shurtleff. Thank you to the staff at Watchung Booksellers and the Kids Room for all their hard work and love of books.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, please like, follow, and share it. You can follow us on social media at Watchung Booksellers. And if you have any questions or ideas, you can reach us at wbpodcast@watchungbooksellers.com.
We'll see you next time. Until then, for the love of books, keep reading.